On a cold January night in 2020, a young Mennonite woman's life was cut short in a shocking act of violence that would shake communities across multiple states. The disappearance and murder of Sasha Krause, a 27-year-old Sunday school teacher from New Mexico, and the subsequent investigation and conviction of her killer, Mark Gooch, reveal a disturbing tale of resentment, religious conflict, and senseless brutality. But first, subscribe to our channel for more content, and don't forget to share it with your friends and family. Sasha Krause was a devoted member of the Mennonite faith, known for her kindness, intelligence, and commitment to her community. Born and raised in Texas, Krause made the decision to join the Mennonite Church at the young age of 11. Her dedication to her faith was evident throughout her life, as she pursued a path of service and education within the Mennonite community. Krause's talents were many and varied. She was fluent in Spanish and was learning French to aid in her ministry work. Her linguistic abilities allowed her to bridge communication gaps within her community, often translating church services into Spanish for non-English speakers. Beyond her language skills, Krause was also a gifted writer, composing both music and poetry. Prior to her move to New Mexico, Krause worked as a school teacher in Grandview, Texas. Her relocation to the Mennonite community near Farmington, New Mexico, came after a disagreement with another teacher. In Farmington, she found a new purpose working with Lamp and Light Publishers, a Mennonite publishing ministry. On the evening of January 18, 2020, Sasha Krause left her home in the secluded Mennonite community near Farmington, New Mexico. Her destination was the local church, where she intended to gather materials for her Sunday school class the following day. It was a routine errand, one that should have taken only a short time. But Krause never returned home. The alarm was raised when Krause's car was found abandoned in the church parking lot in the early hours of January 19th. The discovery immediately raised concerns within the tight-knit Mennonite community. It appeared that Krause had left without taking any personal belongings, adding to the mystery of her disappearance. The San Juan County Sheriff's Office quickly launched an extensive search operation. Helicopters took to the skies, while drones, K-9 units, and ground teams scoured the rugged landscape surrounding the Mennonite settlement. The area, described as sporadic and spread out by Jamie Harcrow, a public information officer for the San Juan Sheriff's Office, presented significant challenges for the search teams. As days turned into weeks with no sign of Krause, the community's hopes began to fade. A $50,000 reward was offered for information about her whereabouts, but no substantial leads emerged. The investigation was at a standstill, and authorities were left wondering whether Krause had left voluntarily or if she had been abducted. The breakthrough in the case came more than a month after Krause's disappearance, but it was far from the outcome everyone had hoped for. On February 22, 2020, a camper looking for firewood near the Sunset Crater National Monument outside Flagstaff, Arizona, made a grim discovery. The body of a woman, wearing a gray dress and white coat, was found in a forest clearing. The location of the body, nearly 300 miles from where Krause had last been seen, added a perplexing dimension to the case. Authorities used fingerprints to identify the body as Sasha Krause, matching them to a Texas driver's license database. The autopsy revealed the horrifying details of Krause's final moments. She had been shot in the back of the head and had suffered blunt force trauma. Her wrists had been bound with duct tape, indicating she had been restrained before her death. The medical examiner was able to retrieve a bullet from Krause's skull, providing crucial evidence for the investigation. With the discovery of Krause's body, the focus of the investigation shifted dramatically. What had begun as a missing person case was now a complex, multi-state murder investigation. The key question investigators faced was how Krause had ended up hundreds of miles from her home in New Mexico. The breakthrough in the case came from an unexpected source: cell phone data. Investigators discovered that Krause's phone had pinged 2 cell towers on the night of her disappearance. Crucially, only one other phone had communicated with the same towers at the same time as a phone belonging to Mark Gooch, a 21-year-old airman stationed at Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix, Arizona. Further analysis of Gooch's cell phone data revealed that in the early morning hours of January 19th, his phone had been about a mile from where Krause's body was later found. This digital trail placed Gooch not only in the vicinity of Krause's disappearance, but also near the location where her body was dumped. As investigators dug deeper into Mark Gooch's background, a complex picture emerged of a man with deep-seated resentment towards the Mennonite community he had grown up in. Gooch was raised in a Mennonite family in Wisconsin, attending a Mennonite school through 8th grade. However, unlike Krause, Gooch had chosen to reject the faith of his upbringing. Gooch reportedly told a friend that he didn't want to live as a Mennonite, describing life on his family's dairy farm as depressing. He felt like an outsider in the community, partly because his family wasn't born into the religion. This sense of alienation seemed to have festered over the years, developing into a grudge against the Mennonite community as a whole. Despite his parents' disapproval, Gooch joined the U.S. Air Force at 18, a move described by Edsel Burge Jr.B., a research associate at the Young Center for Anabaptist and Pietist Studies, as very much a statement of defiance against the community he grew up in. Gooch himself told investigators that the military allowed him to escape a life he found difficult, sheltered, and restricted. On April 21, 2020, Detective Lauren Nagel interviewed Mark Gooch at Luke Air Force Base, where he was stationed. The detective began by apologizing for the little trick of bringing him to his workplace for the interview. When asked if he knew why a detective wanted to speak with him, Gooch initially suggested it might be about driving his motorcycle too fast. However, Detective Nagel quickly informed him that she was investigating the homicide of Sasha Krause. During the nearly 90-minute interview, Gooch acknowledged his Mennonite upbringing in Wisconsin, but expressed that he found the lifestyle too restrictive. When questioned about his whereabouts on the day of Krause's disappearance, Gooch claimed he had driven to a ski resort near Flagstaff and then to a Mennonite community in Farmington, New Mexico. He said he went to see when they held service, but denied ever knowing Sasha before hearing about her on the news. When asked if there was something that happened to him in the Mennonite church that upset him, Gooch replied, "Not really. It's just the way of life. I didn't really like it, and I was happy to be out of it." As the interview progressed, Detective Nagel directly asked Gooch if he was involved in Krause's murder. Gooch responded with a firm "No, ma'am" when asked if he had abducted Sasha Krause. He again replied, "No, ma'am," at this point. Gooch seemed to realize the seriousness of the situation, stating, "So, it sounds like I need to get a lawyer because you're trying to pin something on me." Following this exchange, Gooch was arrested for kidnapping and murder on the same day as the interview. As the investigation progressed, more damning evidence against Gooch came to light. His brother, Samuel, told authorities that Gooch held a grudge against the Mennonite community, feeling he had been mistreated. Text messages between Gooch and his brothers revealed disturbing sentiments towards Mennonites. Just days before Krause's disappearance, Gooch had texted about surveilling Mennonites, describing them as old people without much to live for and expressing disappointment. Perhaps most incriminating was the discovery of the murder weapon. After Gooch's arrest, a friend brought authorities a .22 caliber rifle that Gooch had asked him to hold. State crime lab analysts concluded that this gun had fired the bullet extracted from Krause's head. Gooch's attempts to cover his tracks also came to light. His car had been detailed the day after it became public knowledge that a body had been found in an Arizona forest. While in jail, he asked his brother Samuel to remotely erase his phone and SD cards. Samuel, unaware that his brother's rifle had been handed over to police, also attempted to retrieve the weapon, leading to his own arrest for interfering in the investigation. The key evidence found at the crime scene that linked Mark Gooch to the murder of Sasha Krause included 1. Cell phone data. Krause's phone had pinged 2 cell towers on the night of her disappearance. Gooch's phone was the only other one that had communicated with the same towers at the same times. 2. Location data. Gooch's cell phone data showed that in the early morning hours of January 19th, his phone had been about a mile from where Krause's body was later found. 3. Murder weapon. After Gooch's arrest, a friend brought authorities a .22 caliber rifle that Gooch had asked him to hold. State crime lab analysts concluded this gun had fired the bullet extracted from Krause's skull during the autopsy. 4. Duct tape. Krause's wrists had been bound with duct tape, while not directly from the crime scene. Other evidence that linked Gooch to the murder included 5. Car detailing. Gooch's car had been detailed the day after it became public knowledge that a body had been found in an Arizona forest. 6. Attempted cover-up. While in jail, Gooch asked his brother Samuel to remotely erase his phone and SD cards. It's important to note that much of the evidence was circumstantial, with no direct DNA or eyewitness evidence mentioned in the provided information. The trial of Mark Gooch began in October 2021. Prosecutors argued that Gooch's resentment toward Mennonites had driven him to kill Krause, a woman he had never met. They presented the wealth of circumstantial evidence, including the cell phone data, the recovered murder weapon, and Gooch's attempts to cover his tracks. Gooch's defense team countered that the case against him was circumstantial, with no DNA or eyewitness evidence. They also pointed out that Gooch had no history of violent acts. However, as Louis Schlesinger, professor of psychology at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, noted, most people who kill have a history of other antisocial acts. Many do not. It depends on the type of murder. On October 13, 2021, the jury found Mark Gooch guilty of kidnapping and first-degree murder. In January 2022, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Prior to the sentencing, Sasha Krause's parents sent a poignant letter to Judge Kathleen Brown Nichols. While they chose not to attend the sentencing hearing in person, their words painted a vivid picture of their daughter and the impact of her loss. In their letter, the Krauses described Sasha as more than just their daughter; she was their friend. They shared memories of her eagerness to read at a young age, her conscientiousness, and her determination. They even touched on her occasionally bossy demeanor with her sisters, a trait born from her sense of confidence. To help the judge see Sasha as more than just a victim, the Krauses shared photographs of their daughter. These images showed Sasha reading to children, spending time with her family, and enjoying a snowy outing in Colorado. These snapshots of Sasha's life served as a poignant reminder of the vibrant young woman whose life had been cut short. Perhaps most striking was the Krauses' perspective on their daughter's murder. Despite the horror of what had happened, they expressed a belief that it had to be part of God's plan. God will use her death for his glory, they wrote, and I am convinced he has eternal purposes for Sasha that we can only guess about from here. This sentiment of faith in the face of tragedy underscored the depth of the Krauses' religious convictions, mirroring the faith that had been so central to Sasha's life. In a brief address to the court before his sentencing, Mark Gooch spoke publicly for the first time since his arrest. His words were few and carefully chosen, offering little insight into his motivations or any sense of remorse for his actions. "Firstly, I'd like to express my sincere condolences to the deceased family," Gooch said, his tone described as emotionless. He then turned his attention to his own family, adding, "And also, I'd like to express my thankfulness for the love and support from my own family in this difficult situation." Gooch's brief statement, while acknowledging the loss suffered by Krause's family, stopped short of admitting guilt or expressing regret for his actions. His focus on his own family's support, while understandable, struck a discordant note given the gravity of his crimes and the devastation he had caused to the Krause family. During the trial, Mark Gooch's father, Jim Gooch, provided testimony that offered some insight into his son's departure from the Mennonite faith. Jim Gooch explained that his son had left the Mennonite community and joined the military because he lacked a converted heart. This statement hints at the spiritual and cultural divide that had grown between Mark Gooch and his family. In Mennonite tradition, a converted heart refers to a sincere and complete acceptance of the faith. Jim Gooch's words suggest that, in his view, his son's rejection of Mennonite beliefs and subsequent enlistment in the military were symptoms of a deeper spiritual disconnect. This testimony adds another layer to the complex backdrop of religious tension and personal resentment that seemed to fuel Mark Gooch's actions. It paints a picture of a young man at odds not only with his community, but also with the fundamental beliefs of his family. The murder of Sasha Krause is a tragedy that defies easy explanation. A young woman dedicated to her faith and community fell victim to a man who had rejected that same faith and harbored deep resentment towards it. The senselessness of the crime left even the presiding judge, Kathleen Brown Nichols, perplexed. As Mark Gooch begins his life sentence, the impact of his actions continues to reverberate. For the Krause family, the loss of Sasha leaves an unfillable void. For the Mennonite communities in New Mexico and beyond, her murder has shaken their sense of security and raised difficult questions about their relationships with those who leave the faith. Yet, even in the face of this tragedy, there are glimmers of the compassion and faith that defined Sasha Krause's life. The Farmington Mennonite church community, in a letter addressed to Gooch, described his crimes as heinous, but expressed a belief that he had some remorse and urged him to repent fully. This gesture of reaching out to the man who had caused them such pain is a testament to the strength of their convictions. As for Mark Gooch, reports suggest that he has turned to religion while in prison, though it's unclear exactly which Christian denomination he's embraced. Whether this represents a genuine change of heart or a response to his circumstances remains to be seen. The case of Sasha Krause and Mark Gooch serves as a stark reminder of the destructive power of resentment and the tragic consequences when that resentment turns to violence. It also highlights the resilience of faith communities in the face of unimaginable loss. As the Mennonite community continues to grapple with this tragedy, they do so with the same spirit of faith and forgiveness that Sasha Krause embodied in her life.